Okay, your test is broken down by 3 sections. We're going to do 2 of the 3 today in class. I'm going to do a couple with you, give you some notes, kind of give you some guided work for you to ask questions if you're not too sure. So either work this out on your own paper or print this out. We will get up to the word problems. The goal is to get to the word problems, and then we'll address the word problems tomorrow. Test will be on Wednesday. Minimize this. Nope, we didn't do it. There it goes. All right, so you will have a couple just review special right triangles. And so if it's a 4540, 590 triangle, the hypotenuse, did it change on me again? Is root 2, sorry, times as long as the leg. So, oh yeah. So basically your formula whenever you have a 45, 45, 90 triangle is x, those are your legs, they're both are the same, and then the hypotenuse is x root 2. Okay, or you can think of it as your leg, and then your leg times radical 2. Another thing is sometimes in your triangle, if you want to kind of just some examples you need to remember in the illustration. This is one you have to see a box. You're either going to need to see arcs or a 45. Okay, and then you have to remember that if I see a 45, then that means these are the legs. So the legs are the same. Okay, and then your hypotenuse over here equals whatever the leg is times root 2. Okay. So just some facts of knowing where it's at, where it's located. Now for a 30, 60, 90 triangle, this is when we have the legs are not congruent. So the hypotenuse is twice as long as the short leg, okay? And the longer leg is root 3 times as long as the short leg. So the difference mainly in this scenario is you got to understand that in this triangle, you should see a 30 or a 60. Opposite the smallest angle is your short leg, then long leg, then hypotenuse. Just recognize the part. So Arthur, I'm going to give you the diagram for you. We want to talk about solving with the diagram versus solving without. So on number 3, taking those facts that were discussed on 1 and 2, they want you to figure out the closest length of the section of the plastic pipe from point A to point C. This is point A up here. This is point C. So basically they're asking us to find this tube, which represents the hypotenuse, because it's opposite the right angle. Well, a key thing that they gave us in this problem is the fact that these 2 legs are the same. Okay, they're 4 feet and 4 feet. So that's like our x and our x. So our hypotenuse would be x root 2. So to find that answer, you just basically do whatever your legs are times root 2. Well, our legs are 4 feet. So you write 4 root 2, excuse me. And then they want the closest length. So we're going to type that into the calculator. So guys, the calculator link that I shared with y'all, let me minimize this if it lets me. Hold on. Try this again. I guess it's not going to let me do it. Oh, anyways, let me clear this. The calculator I shared with you should be working now. If you have some errors, I'll be checking in throughout this week. But you're going to need a calculator for your test that does trig. That's why I gave you this free link. So am I in the right one? Yeah. All right, so if I type in 4, then second square root here to get the radical 2, I want to see what that decimal is. So just hit enter, and we get 5.65685, okay? So this would be approximately 5.685. So they want us to the nearest tenth of a foot. Well, it looks like they round right here. So our answer is B, 5.7. Okay. Now, for a problem like number 4, no diagram is given, so now you have to draw the diagram. So either you're definitely gonna have one with and one without, one with and one without. So on this problem, the key information is in regards to, it says you have a square garden. So it's a square, perimeter of 48 feet. The question is, what is the length of the diagonal of this square garden? Okay, so you're gonna have to kind of sketch a square. Doesn't have to be to scale. For it to be a square, it has to have 4 right angles and all 4 sides are congruent. So if I know the perimeter is 48, then to find each side, I'm just going to do 48 divided by 4. That would give me the side. So that means it is 12. So each side is 12. Because they're asking us to find the diagonal goes from corner to corner, like such. So once I do that, once I'm dealing with a square and I draw that diagonal, I now know this is 45. This is 45. To get that piece x, that x would be the leg times root 2. Well, my leg is 12. So the answer is 12 root 2. So one with, one without. And we're going to do one for each type. So in this one, on number 5 is the 30, 60, 90, because I see the 60 right here. So that means that this has to be 30, which means because I have this 40, opposite the 30 is the short leg. So our short leg equals 40. Opposite the 60 is the long leg, and opposite the right angle is always the hypotenuse. Well, in the 30, 60, 90 triangle, the long leg equals the short leg times root 3. Well, since I already know my short leg, the answer would be 40 root 3. Oh, shoot. I just realized I didn't do something. Okay, so I know the diagram is missing on the next page. Yeah. Okay, so 16 with the diagram, 7 without. So 6, I said 16. 6, sorry, with the diagram, 7. So 6 and 7 I'm going to leave for you to do. I'm going to talk about section 2. Now I gave you some notes and some things to remember. Okay. These 4 steps are very important. Or 5 steps, excuse me. Okay, some things to remember when dealing with SOHCAHTOA. Okay. First thing, you have to have some type of reference angle. So we need to have some type of angle, some type of degrees given. The first step when dealing with this is always mark the angle. We usually mark the angle by circling it. So we circle the angle, and then we label the sides in relationship to that angle. Okay, so these are the parts that you have to know. If I go across from that circled angle, that is your opposite side. And if I go right next to, down here, this would be your adjacent side. And opposite the right angle is always your hypotenuse. So you have to know how to do that part, like labeling in relationship to the angle. Because if I'm talking about the first 3 letters, the so, S is for sine, and that ratio is the opposite parts over the hypotenuse. Okay. Then the next three letters, CAH, that's cosine. That is your ratio of the adjacent over the hypotenuse. And then the last TOA, that is your ratio of your tangent. And the O and A is your opposite over the adjacent. Okay. Okay. They're taking care of it. All right, so the other key information that you need to know. Okay, so we label the sides, we decide which trig function that's picking one of these three that we have here. We write the equation, then we solve it. But the key thing is recognizing what we have. If x is on top, this part right here, if it's a x is on top of your equation or your portion, you multiply to solve. Okay. Now, if the variable or the x is on the bottom, okay, if x is on the bottom, then you divide to solve. And if x is inside, inside the triangle, then you use the inverse. I'm going to extend my page a little bit. Inverse to solve. Sorry. Okay, and examples of inverse is when we do sine -1, cosine -1, tan -1. So you have to do second and then that trig function to get it. Okay. All right, so now what we're going to do is use these 5 steps to solve and round our answers. If it's a side, they want us to round to the nearest hundredths, okay? And then if it's a angle, they eventually want us to round to the nearest whole number, the nearest degree. So in this first section, they just want you to give the fraction, the ratio, you know, the opposite of hypotenuse or adjacent over hypotenuse, and then round to the nearest hundredths. Now, because for all of these, we're using angle A, that is our reference angle, so that's what we circle. Now, to do a sine, let me change my font here. That's when I do, that's when I do the opposite part over the hypotenuse, okay? So if I go for angle A, the opposite is over here, the 12, and the hypotenuse is the 13. So all they want is the fraction. So we write 12 over 13. And then they want the approximate decimal rounded to the nearest hundred. So when you go to your calculator, they just want you to do 12 divided by 13. Round that to the nearest hundreds, that's 2 decimal places. So look at the 2 has a 3 after that, so that's just going to be 0.92. So this would be approximately 0.92. Now to do the cosine, this is when we did the adjacent over the hypotenuse, okay? So adjacent to this angle is right next to it, so that would be the 5. So this, since it's adjacent over hypotenuse, this would become 5 over 13. And then we convert that to a decimal. So when we go on our calculator, we're just doing 5 divided by 13, and that's 0.38. That's approximately 0.38. Okay, hold on, students. All right, and then for tangent is when we're going to do the opposite over the adjacent. So opposite would be the 12, the adjacent's over 5, and that comes out to be 2.4. Okay? So I am going to ask some questions that ask you just to write the ratio, or use the ratio to find the missing angle. Hold on just a second, guys. On this part, I got to go to the next page to see the diagram. So we're making our questions, we're trying to determine the angle here. So we're kind of working backwards because we know we're doing cosine, because it says it right here. And we know cosine means to do the adjacent over the hypotenuse. Well, obviously, we know 17 is the hypotenuse. So we just got to figure out if 8 is the adjacent part. So 8 would be this side. What angle is adjacent to that 8? The angle that's adjacent to the 8 is angle 1, because it would be right next to it. So this answer is angle 1. Angle 1 would give you that ratio, 8 over 17. Now for tangent, we know tangent is dealing with your opposite over adjacent. So if 8 is the opposite, you have to go to opposite. So this would have to be angle 2. Okay. And then for a problem like this, sine of 0.8235, they gave the decimal, okay? But I know that sine means I'm doing opposite over hypotenuse. So that means my opposite could be, if my angle is 2, if I'm looking at angle 2, the opposite would be 8 over 17. If I'm looking at angle 1, the opposite would be 15 over 17. So what I have to do is just check each one of these fractions. So what I do is I go to my calculator and I do 8 divided by 17. And I check to see, does it give me that decimal? Nope, that one did not. So then I go to the next one, which was 15 divided by 17. And that gave me the same decimal in the problem. So that means this would be angle 1. Okay? All right, so you're going to have some basic, just give me the ratio off the diagram, okay? Then we're going to go into actual solving. So when we go to solving, when we go to this section, and I'm probably going to focus on the evens here. We have to refer back to these steps. Mark the angle, label the sides, decide what trig function, write the equation, solve. And so you have to recognize if it's on top, on bottom, or inside, okay? So starting off with 16, on number 12, since they already gave us the equation, well, right off the bat, I see this variable is on top. And whenever it's on top, it means you're going to multiply to solve it. So if you need to, you could kind of think of this over 1. So my answer would be 19 times, the parentheses, the tangent of 56. This, everyone has to get it to calculator ready. And you're going to have access to a calculator that can do trig, which is why I gave you that free link. Okay, if you're in person, I will provide the calculators for you. At home, I make sure you use that calculator assignment to help you. So what we're going to do, if you go to your calculator, we're going to do 19 the times the tangent of 56 degrees. And they want us to round our sides to the nearest tenth. So that's 1 decimal place, but I have a 6 after that one, so that's going to be 28.2. Okay. So 13 is very similar to 12 because the variable's on top. Now, if they don't give you the equation, then we have to go through those steps. So step 1 says to mark the angle. So there's our angle. Step 2 says label our size in relationship to this angle. So our size in relationship to this angle, the 14 would be the opposite and the x would be the adjacent. Step 3 asks us to pick the correct trig function. Okay, decide which trig function can make with those sides. So since I'm dealing with opposite, this is when you have to kind of know your know the acronyms. So if I'm looking for an O and an A, the only one with that combination is the tangent, the TOA. So what we would write is the tangent of the angle 28 equals the opposite part over the adjacent part. So 14 over x. And here, now we see, oops. Now this is on the bottom. So when it's on the bottom, you divide. Okay. So another way to think of it is we're going to switch these. We're going to switch these two around. I'm going to put the x over here, and I'm going to put that tangent of 28 where the x is. So if I rewrite it, it's showing 14 divided by the tangent of 28. And then once you get to here, this is showing calculator ready. Sorry. The L. So we're going to type in 14 divided by tangent of 28. This is going to come out to be 26.3 because we can't run that 3 up. So the answer here is x equals 26.3. Okay. So follow your 5 steps. I'll do another one with y'all. Because in this section, all the diagrams are going to be given to you. It's just a matter, can you go through the steps, identify the angle, like circle the reference angle, label the parts. This x would be opposite that angle. The 24 would be the hypotenuse. Can you decide which trig function that is? Because we're doing opposite and hypotenuse, that would be the sine. So we would write the sine of the 50 degrees, the angle, equals the opposite part over the hypotenuse part. Now our x is on top, so we multiply. Since it's on top, I should automatically know you're going to take the bottom and multiply it to the trig angle. Okay, so you're going to do 24 times the sine of 50. So when you go to your calculator, 24 times our sine of 50. You can close it or not. It doesn't matter. It's not going to change anything. And so we're going to... Okay. Okay. And so this we can round because we have 3, 8. So this is going to be 18. X equals 18.4 here. Okay. So the way you're going to receive credit when I start checking for work, I'm going to check, are you labeling? Like, can you get to your labeling? Do you set up the equation? Do you show calculator ready? Do you get to an answer? Okay, so there's several things that I'm checking for work. And that's why I'm trying to walk you through it so you know how you can receive partial credit and what the expectation is. Now, on 18, let's do that one. This is the angle. The x is the angle. 11 is right next to this angle, so this would be the adjacent, and 25 is the hypotenuse. So who deals with adjacent and hypotenuse? That would be cosine. So we do cosine of x equals 11 over 25. Now, because x is the angle that we're trying to find, this is when we have to use, because x is inside the triangle, you have to use the inverse. So x equals the cosine, then a -1, 11 over 25. This is now calculator ready. Okay, it's just showing calculator ready. Okay, so now I can go to my calculator. To get to cosine inverse, you have to hit second, then the cos button. It gives you that -1. And we're going to do 11 divided by, to get that fraction, 25, and hit enter. Because we're trying to find an angle, we have to round this to the nearest degree, which is whole number. So this 63 actually is going to round up. We got a 0.8 there. So the angle, our answer, our x is 64 degrees. Okay. Okay, so I wanted to today get to up to the word problems. Okay, we'll address word problems tomorrow. But at least you have an example of each. You can finish the ones. This is a grade, guys. I hope you saw on Teams that it is a separate grade. I highlighted that. So I'm gonna let you complete the odds, the ones I didn't do. And then and if you're ready, you can start on the word problems, but I'll address that tomorrow. We'll have some time to address that in class. All right. Thank you.